everyone, it is time for the long-awaited guide to the Imaginarium Theater. I know a lot of you have been asking for this video, and it has taken a while to come up with these tips, so hopefully there is something here that will help you. These are my top tips for the Imaginarium Theater. Most of them are based off of my own experience after clearing the theater, and hopefully you will have an easier time after listening to these tips. So without further ado, let us get started with the video, and let me know if you find anything helpful or if you have any questions and would like me to clarify something. Guys, it's almost Valentine's Day, which means it's about time to get cute little gifts for your loved ones. So in that case, I would like to share this month's Sakura-ko and Tokyo Treat boxes. For the month of February, we have some beautiful love theme boxes with the cutest little treats ever. Get a chance to experience a Japanese Valentine's Day from the comfort of your own home with Sakura-ko and Tokyo Treat boxes. This month's theme for Tokyo Treat is Sweet Valentines, where the box includes both sweet and savory snacks, perfect for the month of love. Some of the snacks of note are the Tanuki Spicy Ramen Noodles, Crunchy Choco Banana, Koikea Farm Salt and Seaweed Chips, White Chocolate Strawberry Latte, and of course the full-sized pack of red and white Kit Kats. There are plenty more snacks to try, and definitely good enough to last you the whole month. Also, for the month of February, a lot of these snacks are love-themed and come in very cute packaging, so if you do get the chance, make sure to check them out. They are absolutely adorable. As for Sakura-ko, we have an assortment of local artisan snacks that also highlights the theme, Valentine's Delights. We have some delicious and elegant snacks to try that are sure to make you fall in love. Some of those snacks include the chocolate karinto, strawberry monaka, ume shiso senbei, pudding baumkuchen, and chocolate kuzomochi. There is definitely a snack here that you will enjoy, so make sure to try them all out to see which one is your favorite. But my favorite thing of all is this delicious caramel hojicha tea that smells so good and sweet. I had my cup with a delicious orange cookie and it pairs so well. I highly recommend trying out this combo if you do get the chance to get the box. Don't forget that your Sakura-ko box also comes with a special tableware item, and this time you get the plum furoshiki, which is a traditional wrapping cloth. So if you decide to get this box for a loved one, you can wrap it up and gift it to them, and they are sure to love it. No need to worry if all the names and snacks sound confusing or unfamiliar, since both boxes come with a guide booklet that lists every snack as well as the ingredients. And there are a few exclusive pages that highlight the season of love with some cute pictures, quizzes, and little descriptions. I had so much fun browsing through this month's books, and I'm sure you will too. This box is sure to make someone's day, so feel free to get one for the person you love and show them you care. Or maybe get one for yourself to give you an extra special treat unlike the others. This has to be my favorite set of boxes so far, so I promise you will enjoy it too. Use code AMBER to get a discount on your next box, or click the link in the description. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone! I hope you find a loved one that you can share the day with. Thank you Tokyo Treat and Sakura-ko for sponsoring this video! Okay, so we have a lot of tips, but I want to get started with one of our most important tips, and that is to check out the enemy list ahead of time before you start on the theater. So I'm going to go and teleport to the theater right now and show you what I mean. If you want to follow along and do this at the same time, you are more than welcome to do so. So what I'm going to do is click on the book for the Imaginarium Theater and go to Performance Prep. So over here you can see easy mode, normal mode, and hard mode. I normally do hard mode, I don't do visionary level. Once again, I am free to play for all of this, so if you are free to play as well, no need to worry. I have not spent any money in Genshin and don't plan on doing it, so if you're not interested in investing in all character constellations or signature weapons, then that is totally fine. The theater is still clearable for hard mode as far as I know. I haven't yet checked out visionary, but I'm assuming that most of you just want to achieve easy mode, normal mode, or hard mode. So yeah, I'm going to click on hard mode, and what I'm going to do is click here. So as you can see, it gives you the 3 main enemies that you will be fighting at the big checkpoints. What you want to do is analyze these enemies and decide what kinds of teams you want to play against these. The good thing to note is that there is a description on what the enemy does, in case you don't yet know what they do, and also it tells you what characters have an advantage and ways that you can destroy the enemy's shield ahead of time. Same things with tips for your team compositions. Now here's what I do when I'm planning my teams. After I look at the main 3 checkpoints, I'm going to plan out which characters I want fighting these enemies. For example, the Perpetual Mechanical Array boss, I'm going to want a Vaporize comp for that. The reason I know I want a Vaporize comp is because that's the comp I normally use for defeating the this enemy, even outside of the theater situations. And thankfully this time around, the elements required for the theater are Pyro, Hydro, and Anemo, which means a Vaporize comp is possible. Same thing for this one, I want to make sure that I have a Hydro character, and most importantly I want to have Farina on the team because she can hit this enemy, as well as Yelan for her burst. So in this case, you'll want to rough draft your teams that you have fighting against these main enemies, and even if it's not possible to get every character on these draft teams, you're still able to get your main damage dealers. For example, for the Perpetual Mechanical Ray, I know that I want Hu Tao on my team, so I'm going to make sure that Hu Tao ends up on this team for the final boss, and I want to pair Hu Tao with either Xingqiu, Yelan, or Farina. It does not matter as long as it's one of them, and make sure you're flexible with your team slots. As for an enemy like this, I know that Nuvilet will do really well, so I want to make sure I have Nuvilet prepared. It doesn't matter what the elements of the season are, as long as you look at your enemies ahead of time and draft your teams, then you will be able to plan accordingly, and you won't have to worry about lacking characters or strong enough characters to defeat the boss. So the next very important tip you will want to know is you need to start building all your characters. I'm pretty sure this is very self-explanatory, but you need to start building those characters that you know are good. The key 4-stars you're going to want to build are definitely Bennett, Xingqiu, and Xiangling, and if you have other good 4-stars like Sucrose, Fischl, Chevrus, or another really good support character for the type of team that you're running, those are the characters you will want to prioritize and start building. Of course, if you have 5-star characters, you're going to want to build them too, but I know that some people are free to play and don't spend as much in pulls, so 5-star characters might be a little harder to get. If this is your first time playing the Imaginarium Theater, I highly recommend prioritizing the characters that are the required elements for the particular season, so in this case it would be Pyro, Hydro, and Anemo, but in general having a bunch of leveled characters is going to be key for this. Now the very important thing you will want to know is you need to build the characters according to their purpose. I know a lot of you like to do a bunch of fun builds, and it's actually pretty entertaining to see what you guys are able to come up with. My favorite fun build in that category is definitely going to be like DPS Diona or Healer Klee, something like that, but we all know that that is not really their intended purpose. Yes, Diona can do damage and be a DPS, but we know that because of her skills, they don't really make her fit for that role. Since Diona's burst heals and her skill generates a shield, her main role isn't going to be dealing the most damage for your team. So what you will want to do is build a character based on what their best role possible is. A 5-star in that case would be Kokomi. We know she's a healer, so build her as a healer. Don't try to build her with crit or any other thing like that. Just build her in the way she's supposed to, because it will be a lot easier to have all these characters in their fitted roles so that you're able to come up with better teams, and it is just easier in the planning stage. For characters that are semi-hybrid, such as Jean for example, where she can heal but she also can be a DPS, this is when you'll have to make the decision for her purpose. Now the thing that I most recommend is to build them as a DPS. We know that Jean can heal, but if you put her on all healing type artifacts, she isn't going to be that helpful in the theater, especially when all the rounds are very, very short. A lot of the theater rounds depend on time limits, so having a healer and sustain units are not always the best option since they don't do a lot of damage, and it's very unlikely you will be encountering enemies that are going to rip away your HP. As far as I've known, I haven't had issues with characters dying or lack of healing, since it's not like the Spiral Abyss, which is why I just recommend building them as a DPS, since more damage is going to be helpful so you can finish your runs a lot faster. Characters and team comps you'll want to avoid are definitely hypercarry comps, such as ones that involve characters like Yunjin, where she buffs normal attacks and makes attack speed faster, or burst one-shot comps such as ones with Mona and Bennett. Yes, these teams are pretty good, but they're not good for the theater. They might be good in boss situations, but like I said, it's not going to be finalized the kind of team you're going to have, so in that case, you don't want to rely on teams that need every single key character, and you want flexible characters that can work in any sort of team. An example of that would be Nuvilet, where he can work in a Hyperbloom comp, Taser comp, or even a Vaporize comp, because his main role is to deal Hydro damage, and he's very flexible on the kinds of teams he is with. As for characters like Goro that rely on Geo, they might not be as helpful for the Spiral Abyss just because of their abilities and their requirements for their passive skills. If there's one thing you take away from this, build the characters that you know are going to help you and deal enough damage, but also are flexible in various team slots. On the topic of teams, a very important thing you will want to note is you need to build teams around an elemental reaction. As we know, there is the main reactions that are going to be involved in the theater, and those are the 3 elements that they include, but we all know that those 3 elemental reactions can create various things, such as Vaporize, Hydro Swirl, Pyro Swirl, etc. The one thing I learned is you're going to want to focus on one main reaction, for example Vaporize. So you're going to want to center your comp around vaporized characters, and you'll want to avoid swirling too much. This doesn't really apply so much for this one, but let's say the third element was Dendro instead of Anemo. In that case, there are so many more reactions with Dendro, Hydro, and Pyro than there are with Anemo, and it can get confusing and your reactions could mess up a little bit, especially when you have characters that highly rely on certain types of reactions, such as Kinich in a Burning or Burgeon comp. The type of team comp that you will want to avoid are definitely soup or salad comps. However, this is very conditional because sometimes you'll just want to swirl a bunch of enemies together, but any kind of team that has way too many elements and the reaction is becoming confusing, sometimes it's a little bit hard to focus where your damage is being dealt. Once again, please take this with a grain of salt because sometimes that particular battle will require many elements, and that's not always the case, but if you are fighting a boss, you're going to want to avoid all sorts of different reactions and just focus on the main ones so that you can deal the most damage possible. Another tip about characters is you're going to want to have a healer or sustain unit. However, it's not going to be as important as having one in a Spiral Abyss run, but there is a key thing you need to know, and you need to choose your healer or sustain unit very wisely, because you need to choose this character and make sure that they have a double purpose. For example, a character like Farina is perfect for this, since Farina does deal both damage and she can also heal you, whereas a character like Kokomi would be as less useful because all she does is heal and doesn't really have that much damage. Like I mentioned previously, the runs for Imaginarium Theater are really short, which means you're only going to be spending about a minute or so in every part of the theater. So there are chances that there isn't really going to be enough time for you to get hit and take a lot of damage, and also your health resets every single time, so healing is not really a big priority. That's why I said to avoid having only healer builds and make sure that they can do an equal amount of damage, just so that you're not wasting all that time with healing, since every second counts when it comes to dealing damage in the theater. However, if you are fighting a really deadly boss, it's still important to have at least one healer or sustain unit on your team, just so that you can ensure your DPS stays alive, especially if they are very squishy. A character like Zhongli is perfect for this because he has a shield and he can protect that squishy DPS from taking in all that damage. And also, he has a purpose because he deals damage with his burst and his skill. So again, just make sure you're choosing your healers and sustain units wisely. Another very important tip that I really recommend for you guys is to avoid rewinding the battle. As we know, there is an option to rewind your battle as opposed to just restarting. So if you rewinded, you would go back a few stages, but if you restarted, you would just go over that fight again. Now, the reason why I say avoid rewinding is because it can mess up some progress, and for me, it's never really worked in the past, and I prefer just to try again with a different set of characters as opposed to start fresh entirely. And also, there are a limited amount of times you can rewind the battle, and I would rather not waste it on a very easy run where I could have just tried again with a bunch of different characters. If you know you are really struggling and you really like your run so far, I'm sure you can rewind and there is a reason for that, but if you did get unlucky and had a bad run, there is no need to rewind and try it all again. Just restart that singular battle with a different set of characters and maybe it will work again. But just take this advice with a grain of salt and do as you need to do when you are in the theater, because everyone's circumstance is different, but I just say that avoid rewinding and just restart the battle instead. Another thing that is very important is using your Fantasia flowers. Early on, I avoided using the Fantasia flowers because I was scared to use them. I don't really know why, because they are so helpful, and up to now I use every single last one I get, because these are key for getting the right buffs. If you think you can do it unbuffed, it's very unlikely, and I just suggest getting them. It makes the run so much easier. So before you go into every battle, make sure that you get all the applicable buffs, such as if you're gonna go into battle with a vaporized team, get the vaporized buff because you know that's going to help you in the end. Avoid the buffs with very few characters that it applies to. Again, we will want to be very wise with our spending, but what I prefer to do is instead of using the Fantasia flowers to get characters, I would just use them to purchase buffs instead. The only time I would use some Fantasia flowers to get some characters is before a boss run where I really require those types of characters. So for example, if I have the opportunity to choose a Pyro character and I need a character for my vaporized team, that's when I would spend the Fantasia flowers to get that specific character. But other than that, it's just best to utilize the characters that you have and get buffs according to them, as opposed to getting new characters where you're gonna have to spend for those buffs again a second time. There is the opportunity to get the free mystery caches. Now, I tend to avoid those because they are a mystery and I can't really guarantee what I get. I just like to purchase the buffs instead. I know there is an achievement for that, but I just tend to avoid it because these runs for theaters take a long time and I don't really want to restart it if I get a bad one. So it's best to just guarantee your luck when you're going to be defeating enemies as opposed to having a mystery. Now here is a very important tip that I highly recommend you do, and that is to use your lowest level characters in the really easy battles. Now as you know, my lineup is not the strongest. I have a lot of characters below level 80 and most of them are actually unbuilt. However, the reason that they do work in the theater is because I use them in the really easy challenges. Even if they don't apply in the reaction you're doing, as long as you have them on the team and you're using up one of their points, that means you can replace them for a much stronger character a lot later. If this sounds confusing, let me give you an example. I put Chevreuse in one of my very early teams because I know that I don't want her in my teams later. As we know, the bosses and enemies get harder as we progress further into the theater. So having a level 70 Chevreuse is not going to be the best option, which is why I put Chevreuse in one of my earlier comps and in one of the really easy fights just so I can get her out of the way and we can refresh and get a bunch of new characters later, because once we get rid of a character, there is the opportunity to get a new character. So after 2 of Chevreuse's points run out, maybe perhaps I could bring in someone like Linny or someone like Klee. I would much rather have Klee or Linny than Chevreuse on my team, but in order to have the chance of getting Klee or Linny, I will need to take Chevreuse off, and the only way of doing that is just to put her on a team and let her go through the really easy battles. You don't even have to play that character on the field, just as long as you are getting rid of them during the very easy battles. As for really good meta characters like Neuvillette, Furina, Kazuha, etc., just don't use them for the battles that you could possibly complete with a 4-star character. Like if you know you're going to be defeating treasure hoarders, why would you put an extra strong GPS? You would much rather use your weak characters to defeat the weak enemies and save your strong characters for a lot tougher enemies later. Hopefully this helps any of your future runs. I know that character management is going to be one of the hardest things in the theater, and you really have to know your characters very well in order to get this correctly. And don't worry if you get frustrated. I got so frustrated doing one of these bosses, so it's completely understandable that it's going to be difficult, but the key is just to try and try over again until you get the hang of things. And don't worry, the theater does require a ton of characters, so if you don't have enough characters built, there is absolutely no rush to complete it. Don't worry about missing out on Prima Gems, it's okay, it's gonna be fine, just don't worry. Now for our last tip. This is a very odd tip, but just remember that you can borrow your friend's characters. So in this case, a person in my friend list has a C6 Furina, and the C6 Furina also has her signature weapon. So you might want to have friends on Genshin that have really good characters so you can borrow them in your runs. Now here's the thing, some of your friends might have characters that you have as well, such as a Kazuha, Clorand, etc. However, what I recommend is choosing a character that you actually don't have, such as Mualani. The reason for this is you would have another option as opposed to a better version of a character you have. I would rather have a new character entirely that I could put in a team comp than just a better version of my own character. Also, if they are the same level as my character, I can't guarantee that they're going to be better in my team comps, such as this level 80 Xiangling, which is basically what I have as well, so it's just much better to get a whole new character entirely. And remember, look at your friends list to see which characters they have put out, and if you are looking for some really strong characters to borrow from your friends, I have a Discord server in the link in the description. Just scroll down and find it, and maybe you might find someone to add on Genshin with a bunch of C6 Archons, and perhaps they might let you use it for the theater. This is just a really easy way to get a +1 good character, and it's definitely going to be useful if you plan on defeating really hard bosses that your characters can't achieve. So that will be it for the Imaginarium Theater Guide video. Hopefully some of you found it helpful. This was a very anticipated video. I had a lot of fun making it and planning for it. Researching the Imaginarium Theater was not easy, but it was definitely worth it, and making this guide also even helped me understand the theater a bit more. I really hope it will help you guys too. The theater is not easy if you're doing it for the first time, and it is really hard to get the hang of things early on, so it's okay if you don't get your first perfect run. It took me a long time before I could get all stars. Stay strong out there, guys. You got this. Best of luck on your future pulls and your Genshin journey, and I will see you all in our next video. Bye!